For decades, the North American dream was the suburbs. Big lawns, double-car garage, a great backyard. Well, now the new trend for young, educated, and affluent people is to move back into the downtown core. Now, while that might sound great, a new book, The New Urban Crisis, is arguing that this comes with its own set of problems. Its author, Richard Florida, is a leading voice on urban issues, and he joins me now in studio. Richard, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be with you, Ben.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's dive into the idea of the superstar city. Sounds like a great thing, but it comes with its own problems, doesn't it?
Well, we have two of them in Canada, Toronto, where we are today, and Vancouver. But New York, London, San Francisco, this is where not only young people want to be, media companies, entertainment companies, tech companies that used to be in these suburban nerdistans in the office parks have poured back into the cities. So they've consolidated their advantage, they've increased their distance between other cities, and they've really driven up the costs.
So the rich flock to the cities, the vacuum is there for in the suburbs, the poor are flocking out there. What are some of the hidden challenges for the poor living in the suburbs?
Well, it's really interesting. For years and years, the rich people lived in the suburbs and the poor people lived in the cities, especially in the United States, where I come from originally. Now, the richest 10% of our society have moved back to the cities. As they've come in, the poor have been forced out to the burbs. They're disconnected from jobs. They're disconnected from social services. They have arduous commutes. In Toronto, that commute may be 90 minutes one way, no time for their families. So it really makes it more difficult for less educated, lower income people to make a life.
Now, another thing that your book looks into is the decline of the middle class. Now, everything that I've read, especially in the last election campaign here in Canada, was that there is a debate as to whether or not the decline is a fact. Where do you stand on that? What's your book's take?
It's a big fact, and it's a terrifying fact. You know, I grew up in a working middle class neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey. I got a scholarship and went to college, and I had a great life. Now, it's not just that the middle class in Canada has declined. Those middle class neighborhoods that were the platforms for upward mobility in the Canadian dream have declined. About 65 or 70% of people lived in a middle class neighborhood in 1970. Now, about 40% of us do. It's a dramatic decline, and it comes at a big cost.
Okay, so what are some solutions for urban and suburban inequality? Top of your list.
Well, first of all, we got to build more, especially in big cities like Toronto and Vancouver.
But build more what?
We got to build more towers. We've got to build more mid-rise buildings. We've got to build more affordable rental housing for young people. In older cities like Windsor and Hamilton, we got to continue to drive the economies forward. But transit, transit, transit. And not only in our big superstar cities like Toronto, where you know you can barely get around, we've got to connect those cities like Hamilton, like Windsor, to our centers of employment. Transit and high-speed rail is a critical thing we need to do for the future.
You know, one thing that you've thought about and written about a lot over the course of the years has been sort of the rise of the creative class and how that's one of the drivers of the 21st century economy, especially in urban areas. Are we at risk of losing that creative class in Canadian cities?
I think it's starting to happen. It hasn't happened yet. We are still incredibly creative. Look,
in a downtown Toronto,
it's amazing.
It feels creative.
And there are more technology companies. The big thing is the tech companies are coming in. But now we're seeing younger artists and musicians getting forced out. Now, they're going to outlying areas. They're going to less expensive areas. Some are going to the suburbs where they can make a lot of noise. It's not happened yet, but there is a risk.
Now, I was speaking with some people from City Hall here in Toronto, and they said that Toronto is having a moment right now where there's a lot of uncertainty in the United States because of the rise of populism, which we dealt with here in Toronto a while back. They said that Toronto is having a moment and the city government is trying to capitalize on that to bring people into the city. Do you think that's a good move? And let's also talk about the parallels between the rise in a progressive city like Toronto of a Rob Ford and what that means for global implications.
Well, hopefully we got it out of our system. And what that reflects to me is not Rob Ford, it's the divide in our society between those of us who are in the urban center, close to great universities, close to economic opportunity and making it, and those left behind. But we are closing that divide here in Canada. I think this is an incredible moment of opportunity. I think we heard about Uber coming to Toronto yesterday. There is going to be, I know, I'm an American. I spend a lot of time in the States talking to companies. There is going to be a lot more of this. The good side is that's going to create more economic opportunity. But boy, oh boy, the Americans coming across, but all the people from around the world who used to go to San Francisco or New York for opportunity, coming to Toronto and Vancouver and other cities, that's going to put even more pressure on our housing market, more pressure on our transit. So we have a kind of a crisis of success. Believe it, a crisis of success we've got to deal with.
So lastly, if there is one group that we should be looking to for leadership when it comes to our urban centers across the country? Should it be our municipal government? What the different levels of government? Should it be business? Who should be taking the lead here?
Well, two things. We've got to empower our cities more, and there is a move to do that. You know, we have great mayors all across this country. Naheed Nenshi in Calgary, Don Iveson in Edmonton, John Tory. We can go on. We've got to give them more power to run their cities, and the business community needs to step up more. It's done a good job, but we need more business leadership. And our neighborhoods. We need to empower people in their neighborhoods to get involved and solve their problems.
Richard Florida, the author of The New Urban Crisis. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Ben.
All right.